We're going to see that number go up really quick. And they're all just listening to the recording right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session in panel discussion format with Cornell and University of Nottingham. This is our third of a three-part series, and this one is on essential data skills for leaders. So thank you all so much for joining today. I'm going to give us a couple minutes to have everybody come into the room and settle down and find your video or to be able to see us. You will be in listening only mode for this. There is no chat, so please do have some pen and paper if you want to write down some notes as we're going along, some things that you might want to take away from today's session. It will be recorded, and the session will be recorded and provided afterwards. As long as you've registered for the event and you're in here today, you will receive this recording. And I also want you to be thinking about some questions for the panel. I've got some questions that I'll start off with the panel, and I'd like for you to be also thinking of questions that you would like to ask. And you will find in your system here on GoToWebinar where you can ask a question. And they are asked privately to our panel, and we will be reading them out after we're done with the initial questions. So again, just another minute or so to have everybody come into the room. And also, if you did miss it, we had two other panel discussions in this topic of data transformation, digital transformation, excuse me, and they are recorded and they are on Cornell's website. And I'm sure they're on University of Nottingham's as well. So if you did want to have a listen to those or see the write-up from the first two, please do so. You can find them on our website. Great, I see quite a few people still coming in, so I'm just going to give it, I think, one more minute and then we will get started. And it's great to see so many people from so many different industries, whether financial services, professional services, manufacturing I see on here, pharma, digital companies, universities on here as well. So thank you all for joining today and making the time. Excellent. So the number of attendees has settled down. So I think now would be a good time to get started. So again, just to remind you that this will be recorded. Please ask some questions throughout it, and do please listen along, have a pen and paper, take some notes. You know, what can you do differently? What can you apply in your everyday work life as a result of this session? So this seminar explores how the growth of data and increasing exposure to sophisticated analysis faced by senior managers is really changing leadership as we know it today. We'll discuss the intersection of data and leadership skills and the new skills needed in order to effectively lead in a data-rich world. As I mentioned, this is part 3 of a 3-part session. The first session was focused on the role of leader in digital transformation, and the second one was on how managers can drive a data-led team culture. And this one again is essential data skills for non-technical leaders. Many organizations are not fully realizing the value of data available to them, and it's due to a shortage of the data skills throughout the workforce. In fact, only 20% of all employees said they felt confident working with data, and half of all employees stated that they tend to rely on gut feel still in decision making rather than evidence-driven insights, and that's from Accenture 2019. So there's certainly a skills gap between the highly skilled analysts producing insights and the workforce who need to effectively interpret and use those tools to take action. So this discussion will give us insights into the kind of skills that non-technical leaders need and can acquire to become more data-driven. So I'm really excited to be moderating. I'm Jina Melnyk, by the way, with Cornell, and I am joined by three very experienced professionals in this area. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce them. So first, we have Kim Nilsson. Kim, she started her career as an astrophysicist and at one time held the title Hubble Astronomer. So really, really impressive there, Kim. After an MBA at Cranford University, she founded and led her own data science company, Privigo, for the past 8 years, and has worked with over 150 companies to support teams to solve their data science problems. Kim's also on Cornell's Data Advisory Board and is currently consulting and working on her next venture. Really, her passion is about the power of data and people and really putting those two together. So a huge welcome to you, Kim. Thank you for joining today's panel. Next, we have Graham Harrison. Graham is Group Director of IT, Information Management and Projects at Lincoln College Group and has responsibility for IT, technology, data, and information in the UK and Saudi Arabia. Graham has also external roles as Digital Ambassador for the Lincolnshire branch of the Institute of Directors and as a committee member of the Lincolnshire Cybersecurity Forum. Graham completed his executive MBA recently with the University of Nottingham, specializing in the management of data analytics, and recently completed executive study in business analytics with the University of Cambridge and applied data science with Columbia University in the state of New York. So lifelong learner is what I take it. Graham, welcome to the panel and thank you so much for joining us today. And finally, we have Dan Sands. Dan and I work together at Cornell. He's got a wealth of experience in data analytics and data science. He's a core member of the Ethics Committee of DataKind UK, where he supports charities and governmental organizations in their data ethics maturity path. He's got a combined background in psychology, economics, and data science, works with tech leaders in the US, Europe, and Asia, which allows him to think of data challenges from all different perspectives. And Dan is also a professional development expert for us at Cornell, so working directly with our learners on our data programs that we have through our apprenticeships. So a huge welcome to you as well, Dan. Excellent. So let's get started here with some questions. Just as an opening, I guess, we need data skills as leaders, right? We need to understand opportunities presented by data. We need to show authenticity in role modeling data-led behaviors in our organizations and for our teams. And as leaders, we really need to enhance our own careers by acting in a more informed, evidence-led way. So the first question, and Dan, I'm going to start with you, and then Kim as well, is where does skills development fit in a successful digital transformation strategy? So where does skills development fit in a successful digital transformation strategy? Dan, how about you take the first one?
So what I wanted to say about this question is that there are multiple skills that we usually think of when we think about improving the data, the digital transformation of an organization. But we usually think about things like learning how to do AI and things like that at the level of technical people. However, one skill that we usually tend to overlook is the development of managers, not necessarily in technical skills, going as deep as technical stakeholders have, but in the ability to be able to understand what technical teams do. Another skill that is usually overlooked is coming from the other side. Technical stakeholders being able to work with non-technical stakeholders, with their managers, explaining things in plain terms and being able to understand what the business requires. So in terms of strategy and digital transformation, I think that the most important, often overlooked aspect is being able to bring people from different backgrounds and help them to work together for the benefit of the organization. We tend to overthink on the flashy stuff, and we forget about working together in order to achieve the results the organization is looking for.
Great, thanks, Dan. So it sounds like in some ways keep it simple, right? So don't overcomplicate the data or how you're going about it from a technical way, and that non-technical leaders, it's really not so scary, as I know you and I have talked about before, that there are certain skills that you can learn and should learn as a non-technical leader. And really, like you said, kind of bridging that gap when you've got somebody up here really senior, really focused on technical side, and you've got somebody that is non-technical, and kind of bringing those together. Great, thanks, Dan. How about you, Kim? What are your thoughts about skills development fitting into a successful transformation strategy?
Well, I totally agree with both of your points there already, that when it comes to leaders, business leaders saying we need to do data science now, we need to do AI now, the easiest thing to jump on is to say, well, so let's bring in data scientists to bring in that really, really deep expertise. But that's not enough, and it's only going to get you so far. And I totally agree that we need the whole organization, in some sense, to really start to understand what data is, and at different levels. Some just need to have a very high level understanding, some need to have a deeper understanding. But I think it's one of those essential skills that's going to be required in the future, the way the computer became essential within an office 20, 30, 40 years ago. And for example, tools like Excel and Word that we all sort of have a basic understanding in. Some are experts, but we all sort of understand it. And I think what's really hard here is that it is a new technology that no one knows anything about yet. So where do you start, and where is the basic level that everyone needs to understand? Things like, for example, structured versus unstructured data. What is that? Or how do I read a dashboard? That sort of data literacy everyone needs to have. But I think what's really hard then also about building that skill within the team is the fact that this is very intangible versus, for example, learning to use a computer. Well, there's a machine and you have to figure out which buttons to press to make things happen. This is a much less tangible skill because it is about software, and there's often an assumption as well that you should naturally understand data, which can make it really hard threshold then for someone to reach out and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand this, I don't know about this. So it's a harder skills need to identify in some sense, but it's also a critical one for today's organizations.
Absolutely, Kim, thank you for that. I really like what you just said at the end there too. It is really difficult to identify what those skills are within, which level of the organization. And if you are a more senior person, having a bit of vulnerability to say, you know what, guys, I don't know which tool I'm supposed to be using. There's all these tools that we're using as an organization. Which one do I need to understand best? And just asking those questions and finding the right programs or short courses or whatever to really get up to speed. I think I remember, Kim, in one of the articles that you've written with Corndell, that skills either tend to be taken for granted or the individual is really left to take responsibility for their own training. That really comes into play here, is you really need to identify, for as difficult as it is, and working through that intangibility of it as well. Excellent. Thank you both. So let's move on to our next question. Graham, I'll start with you on this one, if that's okay. Really keen to know, what are some of the key data skills that can have an impact on performance? So we're looking for the key data skills that can have an impact on performance. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, thanks, Gina. I've got 6 key sets of data skills that I always look for, and we look to develop in leaders, and it builds very much on the points that Daniel and Kim have been making. So my first set is for leaders to have an understanding of the potential and value that data and having a mature data capability can bring to your firm. And there's plenty of research evidence to back it. For example, data analytic firms are twice as likely to be top quartile financial performers, and they're also, data mature firms have on average earnings before tax 20% higher. So understanding the benefits so that you can be an advocate for it, that's my first skill set for leaders. My second is to have a broad understanding of the key concepts. Now, you don't need to know what a logistic regression is or any of that technical stuff in it, but perhaps have an understanding that descriptive analytics looks backwards, that predictive analytics looks forwards and makes predictions about the future, and the prescriptive analytics is where you pick and choose from those models to make decisions. My third key skill for non-technical leaders is you do need to be able to have a good conversation with the data analysts and to ask the right questions. So leaders and managers are typically very good at asking probing questions and getting to the bottom of issues and problems, but there's a set of the types of questions where you can build on that skill to really ask the right questions of your data analysts and have a two-way dialogue with them. My fourth one is to have a good understanding of the ethical, legal and moral aspects of data and data science. Sometimes you can develop an algorithm that you think is really useful, but it might turn customers off because there is an inherent suspicion in say using an algorithm to decide whether I can have car insurance or not. So to go way beyond all the regulatory stuff and just have a great understanding of the ethical and legal sides. My fifth one I think is most important of all is understanding that managers and leaders are the key point in the chain. If we have all these great models and dashboards and predictions, but they're not taken on board by leaders and used to influence and change decisions to drive business outcomes, then you've got the best data models in the world that stay on the shelf. And my final key skill is it's really important to have meaningful diversity in recruitment, because not only is data science a multifaceted role, but also you need a diverse team, or you can end up with bias in your data model. So I think diversity in recruitment, very important. So they're my 6 key skills for leaders and managers.
Great, thank you so much, Graham. Those are excellent tips and top things that we need to be considering as non-technical leaders. And for those of you on the call who haven't been able to keep up with writing all of that down, we will be writing this up, and I will be sure to include these, Graham, in our write-up. Those are really essential to understand and to really bucket how this all fits together with the different types of data skills. So thank you for that. And Dan, how about you? What are some of the key data skills that can have an impact on performance?
So I coincide with Graham quite a bit. I usually think about 3 aspects, and,
okay.
And in a way they mirror what Graham was saying. First, the ability, and this is focusing just on technical people. For non-technical people, I have another set, but for technical stakeholders, I would say that one of the most important things that they need to be able to understand is first to be able to identify the needs of the business and to have conversations with multiple non-technical stakeholders. Like, they have been working on solving this type of problems since the company first was created. So they have a deep understanding of how what has worked for them, what has not worked for them, what type of information could be used in order to gain additional insight on the problem. So having conversations with them early on and during the whole life cycle of the project is going to be critical. Second, the ability of technical stakeholders to match problems with the tools that are going to extract the most signal out of the data available, which is usually what technical people like to do. So it's not going to be much of a struggle. That's why I usually put the focus on the first and on the last. And finally, the ability to interpret the results of your modeling so that you can explain in non-technical terms to other stakeholders. And during all that process, being in communication with non-technical people and having and taking in consideration ethical aspects that maybe non-technical stakeholders haven't taken that technical stakeholders usually do take in consideration because they are in contact with they are on the front line and they're going to be aware of those things. But sometimes if you have a siloed person just working with data, they may forget about, although the industry is switching more into the direction of understanding these issues and embracing it during the whole process, but it's something that we still need to put a lot of emphasis on.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I think what's great is, you work with our learners to help them on that journey to really understanding, what level of data they need to have for those that are non-technical in your programs, to really bring them up to speed and to give them that confidence that they can, learn these new skills, which I know is something that you're quite passionate about. Great, thank you, Dan. So another question, Kim, this one is for you to start with, if that's all right with you. And this is around, to what extent are we just talking about technical skills? So, I think about writing code in Python, for example. I imagine that we're also talking about soft skills. So are there softer skills that are equally important for leaders to be data-led?
Well, isn't it fascinating that my fellow speakers both just highlighted soft skills as the critical skills required for success in organizations with this? Of course, it's so obvious that it's required, and I would say that the top 3 soft skills you need is communication, communication, and communication. It's all about communication. There's a big need in organizations that I see for the translator role. So especially the person that can talk to developers, can talk to data scientists, can talk their language, and understand what they're doing and help them understand what the business needs. But then vice versa, turn around to the C-suite, to the board, and explain what the team has been doing and why that has a benefit for the organization, and be that go-between between those two groups. And I think, if anything, that's the greatest skills gap right now. We do have a lot of data scientists, data analysts on the market, but having those people who can be the translators is a tough role to have, and I think we don't have enough of those people in the organization at this point. So the translation piece, the storytelling is super important, being able to tell a story with the data through visualizations or through reports or just through presentations. But telling that story with data is important. Then I think change management, so understanding how to work with people to affect change, because very often data science projects, AI projects will change the organization somewhat. It might be that a call center will operate differently because an AI will sort the calls, or it may be salespeople having to use a pricing engine by an AI to change their pricing, etc. So having then very non-technical people understand that there is a benefit in working with these machines, not just a threat to them somehow, not a threat to their employment, but that it's actually something that will help them in their work. Making people understand that change and embrace that change is a huge topic as well. And then the final thing I would throw in that I also think we don't talk enough about is compassion and empathy. And talking a little bit about the ethics and so on, we do recognize that there are a lot of ethical concerns about what AI can do. So for a data leader to have that compassion and empathy for whoever is going to be touched by this, it could be the employees in the organization, it could be the shareholders of the organization, or it's the customers, whoever sits around as stakeholders around that project. How are they going to be affected? How will they react to that? How will they feel about that? How can we work with them to make sure that everyone gets the best possible experience from an AI project? And I think that's an underrated skill that is also required today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kim. That we're clearly not short on the need for those, I'll say, softer skills, even though half of us probably don't like that term soft, because they are anything but soft skills. Thanks for that. Dan, I kind of see you in there nodding your head in agreement. I know, again, with working with our learners, tell me a bit more from your perspective. What happens on your programs in terms of soft skills?
Yeah, like when we talk about skills for managers, and when Kim was mentioning empathy, I was like, definitely, and that works in multiple ways, because I was mentioning earlier, like for technical people, you need technical people to be empathetic with managers and with the final user of whatever application you're developing. But I already mentioned that. But it works both ways, however. Like the managers, if they want to get as much as possible from their technical teams, they need to understand how they work. And there are three aspects that that they usually need to understand. First is that they need to embrace that not everything that they are gonna try is gonna work. And that's I usually joke saying that it's called data science for a reason, because there's going to be a lot of trial and error. Things are going to work, other things are not going to work, and just by following this process, you're avoiding jumping head first into things that you think that they are going to work but are not necessarily going to. And yeah, it could be saving your organization a lot of resources just by following that process. But again, it's not a panacea. Not everything that you're going to try is going to work. Also, another common mistake that I see stakeholders making is that they try to use all this technical capacity that they are building in their teams and then just use it to verify their previous beliefs. And yeah, you could do that, but it's like driving a Ferrari just on the first gear. Like you're not getting as much as you could be getting from it. You need to, if you want to get as much value as possible from it, focus on identify the issues that are going to make the biggest difference for your organization, then having a conversation with your technical teams so that they understand why do you care about that, what are the main levers, and provide them with the resources that they need. And then they're going to be able to surprise you with approaches that you haven't considered yet, that go way beyond just verifying your hypothesis at the beginning. It may feel good to verify your hypothesis, but how much better would it feel when you go to higher management and you tell them that you have discovered something that nobody else has thought about before?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Thank you so much for that. And there's a bit about, you're not always going to be right. As non-technical leaders, we probably have a lot of answers and a lot of the buck stops here kind of perhaps mentality. And it's true. It's data science. It's science for a reason. And there are going to be I guess shortcomings and I don't want to say failures, but there's going to be ups and downs, like in any other type of career, and we've got to accept that and kind of put our ego in a paper bag sometimes, and take a look at the data and not let our own bias come into view. Excellent, thanks for that, Graham. I know this is a question that you're really passionate about as well. So, what are your thoughts about softer skills, and are they equally important for leaders to be data led?
I think the softer skills are not just equally important. I think they're more important than the hard skills is my view. So data science is often seen as a confluence of 4 areas: maths and statistics, computer programming, domain knowledge and soft skills, and communication and visualization. Only 2 of those 4 are hard skills for a start, so it's equally balanced. But moving beyond that, I think psychology is something that's often overlooked in data science, and it's really, really important. And something that you mentioned right at the off is the prevalence of individuals within professional environments to make decisions based on intuition. And I've done studied a lot of the writings of Daniel Kahneman, who's got some really interesting things to say on this. He says that intuition is thinking that you know without knowing what you do. And he goes as far as to suggest that there's only 2 types of intuitive decision, a lucky one and a wrong one. Now, I think there is room for intuition in business, but intuition is really well suited for repetitive things like hitting a tennis forehand and getting immediate feedback. But if you're going to make, say, a corporate acquisition, you can't do it based on intuition. You need to know what the data is telling you, and then see if the 2 triangulate. And there's also a lot of biases that come into play for all of us when we make an intuitive decision. And the 5 that people always talk about is, have you framed the problem right? Have you asked the right question? Is there any overconfidence, either overly optimistic or pessimistic preconceptions about the outcome? Something Daniel mentioned about confirmation bias. So how many times has someone come to us as data professionals and said, well, we want to implement this business decision, please can you go and get us some data that helps build the business case? Well, that's confirmation bias, because you're being asked to get the data that supports the outcome before you've even looked. And then there's availability bias. Are we over keen to look at the data that's under our noses, rather than saying that the data I really need to answer this question is all the way over there and it's very hard to get, but I need that data in order to answer the problem properly. And then lastly, short-termism. There's always deadlines, pressure from management, and a requirement for fast results, and so short-termism can influence our decision making. So my view is that leaders developing an understanding of the potential pitfalls of only intuitive decisions and not triangulating with data, and also getting to know their own and their team's conscious and unconscious biases, which is all psychological. I think they're amongst the most important soft skills around data science, and often overlooked.
Great, thank you so much, Graham. That's really insightful as well. Could you remind me, just for the audience, you were referring to the work of somebody. Who was that again? Could you say the name?
Yeah, it's Daniel Kahneman. He was a Nobel Prize winner, a psychologist, Israeli psychologist, and his writings are easy to understand. He's written a couple of popular science textbooks, and literally there's something amazingly insightful on every page that he writes. So I highly recommend. Thinking Fast and Slow is a book he wrote, and it's tremendous insight. And although it's psychology, every page says something that data science has a relevance to.
Good, excellent, thank you, and thank you for the quote as well for that you mentioned too on intuition. Say that one more time for me. Yeah, I know you've got it.
Yeah, it's intuition is thinking that you know without knowing what you do.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you, very powerful. Okay, so I'm going to ask another question. I've got a few more to go, and just a reminder to the audience, please do submit some questions, and my team in the background will be picking them up later on the session. So please ask away those questions, and we'll get them into the panel as well. So the next question is around how important should concepts such as machine learning and AI be to non-data experts within an organization? So we talked a lot about our soft skills and the importance and true importance there. So what about the concepts such as machine learning and AI to non-data experts? How much do we need to understand that? Kim, would you like to start with that one?
Sure, of course. I think it's really important that everyone has a certain level of data literacy, and I'm sure it will happen with younger generations coming through, but for older generations, we might have to be a bit more active in talking about it. And I think, like, if you work in any commercial organization today, you could ask anyone, what's a cash flow, what's a profit and loss, what does web development mean? These sort of concepts, pretty much everyone will have a grasp of what is that and why is it important to the company. And I think that level everyone should have. Beyond that, not everyone needs to understand exactly how it works, or how you do it, or how you implement it, or what's the benefits and what's the disadvantages. There are then levels where the next level might be to sort of say, what are the different types of machine learning, and when would you use one versus the other, and so on, and then you go deeper and deeper into knowledge. But I do think that everyone should at least understand what is it and why is it important to the organization.
Excellent, thank you, Kim. Graham, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's certainly contingent on us all to understand the concepts, you know, at a broad level. What is machine learning and AI? Because it can sound like science fiction, but it certainly isn't. So sort of, in traditional programming, if you're going to make a cup of tea, it would be a very strict list of instructions, like boil the kettle, add 500 milligrams of water, heat it to 85 degrees. But in machine learning, you would tend to take the output of that process and compare it. So you get one random cup of tea that was freezing cold and you didn't like that one, and the next one would be 85% milk and you didn't like that one. And eventually you would feed back which cups of tea you didn't like, and the algorithm would learn from the data rather than having a set of instructions. And it's got so much potential, it's so powerful, and it's so fundamentally different that exactly the same algorithm with no changes apart from the data could detect the difference between a rock and a mine. It could predict which patients are likely to develop kidney disease, and it could predict whether two people are likely to be compatible partners on a matchmaking website. And the algorithm hasn't changed, it's only the data. So understanding that it's the data that's driving these things, but it certainly isn't science fiction. And when you've seen a few examples work through the conceptual level, it's relatively straightforward. But once you understand that, you can then start to marry that with the problems the organization is facing to work out what sorts of issues you can solve with these techniques that you couldn't resolve before they came along.
Yeah, it's fascinating because what you're saying is it's about keeping it simple too. I think with the examples. So there's lots of examples out there in terms of machine learning and AI, and you just provided some that were pretty simple for I think a common non-technical leader to understand. With an app, an app with data and putting in those algorithms and what's going to come out of it. So it's like I think it's getting curious about how each of our organizations use machine learning and AI, and just understanding some of those examples and like you both said, that the concepts around them. Excellent, thank you. Dan, anything you'd like to add to that as well?
Yeah, like I like how you mentioned that like common concepts in accounting are now understood by most people in businesses. And I think I agree that we should get to that point with some technical concepts in data analytics and data science. In particular, and it would be, and I can come up with a metaphor for from the accounting side of things, just as you would intuitively understand what a good return on investment in your industry would be, you need to understand what a good performance for a certain model would be. And in that, maybe like we have different opinions, the three panelists today, but I think that that most people, especially if you're working with technical teams, that you should understand what the performance metrics that your team is going to be reporting back to you, what they mean, because there are many different performance metrics, and only some of them are going to be relevant to what you want to solve as a problem. In addition to that, I think that every person working with technical teams should be aware of what the big no-nos in terms of process and statistics are, so that they can check that their teams are not making those mistakes. And finally, having a good understanding of how long certain projects take would make your teams more efficient, because otherwise they could be taking double as much as necessary. They could be going too deep in rabbit holes, because it's enjoyable as a technical person to dig deep into a problem and try to get that additional 0.001 increase in performance, but that's not going to be making a difference in your business most of the time. So you need to be careful that those kind of things are not happening. And when you know all those things, it's going to make a difference not only in your day-to-day process, but also at the time of hiring someone, because you are going to know what to look for.
Absolutely, thank you, Dan. I remember us talking the other week about that, about how important it is in the recruitment process to really understand what you're asking the right questions when you're hiring a technical person. And if you're non-technical, you really need to make sure that you're getting what you need out of those interviews both ways. especially since it's so hard to find that talent. You really need to make every one of those interviews really engaging and worthwhile for both parties. Great, thank you. Just a couple quick more questions. Let's see, Kim, I'll start with you again, if that's okay on this one. What is the impact for digital leads if the broader workforce ups their game in terms of data literacy? The impact for digital leads if the broader workforce ups their game in terms of data literacy?
Well, it's all those good things that we've been talking about, right? The fact that you could now have a team that understands why this is important, understands when to use what tool and how to get started and how to ask the right question, all these lovely things that we've been hearing about today, which means that it will be easier for you to hire. You can speed up your development because everyone knows what you're talking about, and you can more quickly get to outcomes that really matter for the organization. So I think that would, of course, be a huge, huge benefit. I think the only thing I want to throw in as a caveat to that is maybe to be aware of resentment, because if you are that leader and you suddenly, if there's someone in your organization is supposed to be working with this team and suddenly that person feels like they're maybe the stupidest person in the room because everyone else knows so much more, there is a risk there, of course, that person will feel left out, will feel resentment, and will, in one way or another, try to sabotage the process. It may be conscious or subconscious, but there is a risk then that some people will be left behind, and that's where we have to, of course, be really mindful that everyone gets to stay at roughly the same level, and those that are falling behind a bit, that we can try to identify them and help them get up to the same speed as everyone else, both for their future career, but also for the success of the project and for the success of the team. So it can in principle only be good, but let's be aware of those that fall behind and make sure that they can keep up with everyone else.
Great, really great point. You've got to keep them on that journey. No person should be left behind. Absolutely. Thank you, Kim. Graham, how about you? What are your thoughts about the impact for digital leads if the broader workforce ups their game in terms of data literacy?
I think if the workforce is less well informed about data literacy and data science, then the work that the data teams do just won't lead to changes in decisions, tactics, and strategy, because it'll never get implemented. So the potentially good work of the data teams won't have an impact. So it's hard to see too many downsides of the broader workforce up in their game. I think as the broader workforce does become more informed, it is going to create a sharp increase in demand for data projects. So digital leads do need to be prepared for an onslaught of projects and potentially of really high expectations. You know, going back to those amazing sounding quotes that I said about data analytical firms being in the top quartile of financial performers, it doesn't mean that you run a few data projects and suddenly your firm is generating 20% more profit. So as Kim had, I've got a proviso as well. I think that it's contingent on digital leads to really engage with a broader workforce to help them to develop an understanding of the opportunities, but also to have an awareness of the limitations of data science and data projects, because ostensibly every single data science project is a little innovation. It's a little piece of innovation, and often with innovations you'll have like 9 failures and then 1 spectacular success. And just to be, and I think as Daniel said, science is in the title, the data science, deliberately, because it is exploratory. So yeah, there aren't many downsides. I think it's going to, as the broader workforce of skills, it's going to just create a groundswell of improvement of data science analytics actually having an impact. But certainly it needs to happen in partnership, and occasionally there will be a failure because you had a great idea but that piece of innovation just didn't come off or wasn't right in that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because, you know, what you're saying about, you know, the more senior leaders become more savvy and they know what to ask now of the data scientists and data analysts, there's going to be a big push for those projects to get through the pipeline of product development or whatever the case might be. Yet there's a shortage of the people, and we really need to be upskilling them, which of course takes me into our last question before we turn it over to the panel. I'm sorry, to the audience. I got distracted. Hopefully you could all hear me. I have a note saying that I'm on mute. I hope that I'm not on mute. I'm okay. All right, thank you. So I love this question because I think, the answer, of course, is going to be apprenticeships, of which both Cornell and Nottingham offer some amazing apprenticeships in the area of data. So what is, and Dan, I'll start with you because of your role at Cornell. What's the best way for non-technical leaders to acquire new data skills?
All right, so I think the most common mistake that I see people doing when attempting to gain data skills is trying to read a book about it or try to just educate themselves through articles and things like that. Like, the only way that you're gonna gain those skills is by practicing. There's no substitute for practice. I say it almost in every single lesson I have with my learners. And yeah, we have our guides and everything so that they know what is the theory behind it, so that they can understand the key concepts. But there's no point on just doing that. The way that I learned data science was by taking a problem that I wanted to solve, and then learning whatever I needed in order to solve that problem. It was a very lengthy process because I didn't have support. So when you combine those two things together, having a problem that you want to solve, and then having resources at your reach that have been vetted, like in our program, and using them in order to solve the problem, that's going to be the easiest way that you're going to gain those skills. Don't do it just once. Repeat it. It's going to be a cyclical process, but by the time that you attempt 2 or 3 problems, you're going to be very confident about your skills, and it doesn't need to take a long time. Probably even if you have a full-time job like our learners, within 6 months to 9 months, you would already be able to extract data, to understand basic statistic concepts, and to generate models that are going to allow you to solve problems and improve your business bottom line.
Great, thanks, Dan. It's about that practice. If you play a musical instrument, for example, you're not going to learn how to play that instrument by reading it in a book. You really have to pick it up and feel it and experience it, and over time get better at it. And I think it goes also back to what Kim was saying earlier about knowing what level of understanding you need to have. So for some people, it's just understanding certain concepts. And for others, it's that perhaps next level of knowledge and skills that they need to understand. And then for somebody even more experienced to really go in depth. So I think what's nice about the work that we do at Cornell and with the University of Nottingham is, depending on what level you need to get to, there's an apprenticeship program or and programs outside of an apprenticeship levy to support those on that journey. So you're within a group of people that are experiencing a similar journey to gain similar sets of skills. Excellent. Kim, Graham, anything you'd like to add as far as the best way for non-technical leaders to acquire new skills?
Yeah, if I may be slightly controversial, because I actually disagree about the reading books or articles being useless. I absolutely, of course, actually doing something will always deepen any sort of knowledge much further than just a passive experience will do. But if you are starting from scratch, and maybe, as you said, you're at that level where you don't need to know how to implement machine learning, you just need to learn the concepts. I do think that reading is actually very valuable. Maybe not go for a very technical book, but just reading articles and blogs about people, use cases of how these things are used. You may not understand everything at the start, but slowly you'll start to recognize words and it will start to assimilate into your mind. And as a personal example, I used to be a scientist, as you heard. I used to be an astrophysicist, and at some point I got very interested in business, but I understood nothing of it. And a friend of mine recommended me to read The Economist every week, the business pages of The Economist every week, as a way to learn about business. And I started doing that every week, and initially it was all Latin to me, these companies' names and these concepts, but slowly over time it started to sink in, and I started to understand this language of business. And I think that's the same for analytics, to get that basic level. And the third thing I would add, beyond trying it out and beyond doing some reading, is also attending events. I know we're still in the pandemic world, but that will come to an end, I'm sure. And then events will pick up again. And at least if you're living in a slightly larger city, there are typically many events at all sort of levels, from very technical to hopefully non-technical, that you can attend and listen to speakers, panels like this, where also you will pick things up quite quickly. So try it out, do some reading, and attend events. Those are my top 3 points.
Thanks, Kim. That's a great challenge, and thank you for that. Really appreciate that, because you're right. It's definitely there's a lot of great books out there, and I would love your thoughts on that. Maybe even after today's session, or we could include it in the write-up of your, say, top 3 blogs, articles, or people to watch. I think it would be really useful for the people who are on today, listening into today's session. So thank you for that, Kim. Graham, how about your thoughts about the best way to acquire data skills for non-technical leaders?
Yeah, the apprenticeships certainly are one very valuable route, and this particular one may be for the people in the managers' teams rather than the managers, but we're working on recruiting 2 degree apprenticeships with the University of Nottingham, and those young people will have all their tuition fees paid for a degree in data science whilst working, and after 3 years they'll have 60,000 in the bank rather than the 60,000 debt. So there's a definite something to look at there in terms of building your skills, building the skills of your teams. For managers, there's a whole range of great short courses available. So the business analytics, decision making using data with Cambridge University, there's similar courses with the London School of Economics. There's a 1-day course available on a sharp focus on the numbers. There's all sorts of education available. There's another way which is totally different. I read in an article somewhere about a manager who went to their boss and said, look, I want you to second me into the data science team so I can run a project with them. And they volunteered to be thrown in at the deep end, because that was a way that they felt they could pick up the skills sort of on the job. And like Kim, I love reading, and I consume data science textbooks. In fact, I'm waiting. My next data science textbook turning up is on the spurious correlation between margarine consumption and divorce rates, and I literally can't wait for that book to appear in the post. But so sign up for McKinsey Insights, Harvard Business Review emails. Get the email shots from Medium and Towards Data Science. Sign up for the data science forums in Quora. And literally every day there'll be a wealth of free information and knowledge appearing in your inbox, and I just can't wait for those things to appear. And after a while, you can even have a go at contributing to some of those forums yourself, because having a go at writing and trying to impart knowledge is a great way to learn this. So there's all sorts of ways in which non-technical leaders can go about immersing themselves in this exciting area.
Thank you, Graham. Yeah, absolutely. I could hear your enthusiasm for sure coming through, and also just to elaborate just a bit more is myself and the team are developing short courses as well that are outside of the apprenticeship levy to support those senior leaders get those skills around data literacy, communication and storytelling. So definitely more to come. So watch this space. So we do have some questions. I'm going to turn it over to Megan Thompson, who's with me from Cornell, to ask some of the questions that have appeared. And I'm sorry, I'm really conscious of time, that we don't have much time left. But Megan, if I could turn it over to you quickly.
Yes, absolutely. So we have one question come in and they've asked, what level of data skill or knowledge should risk managers obtain to be able to contribute effectively to business and technical discussions on digital projects?
Say that one more time, Megan.
So what level of data skill or knowledge should risk managers obtain to be able to contribute effectively to business and technical discussions on digital projects?
Okay, great. Graham, Kim, Dan, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that we've all been talking all the way through about how to begin the process, the journey of acquiring data skills for non-technical managers, and just what's possible if it really is something that enthuses you. So my answer would be, to acquire, for risk managers to contribute to digital projects, to just acquire as much knowledge as you can, and certainly get started with developing an understanding of the key concepts. There's quite a lot going on in the space of AI for predicting risk, writing predictive algorithms, and that's at the far end. But I would just jump in with some of those resources that the panel has mentioned, and just go as far as your enthusiasm takes you, because the further you get, the more of a contribution you'll be able to make.
Great, thank you so much, Graham. I see some other questions coming through. Megan, did you want to put another one to the panel, please?
Yes, absolutely. So one attendee has asked, it's interesting that the panel have referred to some of the skills mentioned earlier as soft skills. My understanding is that we now refer to them as essential skills. Question mark.
Yeah, thumbs up to that.
Yeah, thumbs up to that, exactly. I like that. I'm going to adopt that. I'm really tired of saying soft skills. I agree. Thank you for that, Kay. I could see who that is. Megan, are there any other questions in there?
Yes, we have a couple more. So what are the potential pitfalls around data and AI, and how should we address these?
Well, there's a lot of them, aren't there?
Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the most common things that I say you have to start with, if you haven't done any data science before and you're just getting started, and what should you look at first is the two key things in my view is, on one hand, the data. Do you have enough of the right type of data to do data science? So a company might rush out and say, we're going to start this now, we're taking on board data scientists and so on, and then realize that either they don't have enough, or they don't have the right type, or they don't have enough complexity in their data, or even they don't have access to the right data. It's not clean, it's sitting in places where you can't access them. So first, taking a bit of time to think about actually what data do we have, and do we have access to it, is it clean, etc. The other big thing, and I think it was Graham who mentioned, what's the question you want to answer? And I think a lot of organizations, again, rush out thinking we have to do something with data without really thinking, well, what's the most critical question we can answer? Or maybe where's the lowest hanging fruit that we can answer first with our data? And sometimes it takes someone that is experienced with data science projects and have a lot of use cases in their mind to help make that priority list of projects. But taking a bit of time up front to look at your data and to think about the question carefully before you rush out and do something is my top advice.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kim. And I'm just conscious of time. So if we haven't answered your question, we could see who's asking them. We could get back to you through email. And if you did have other burning questions that you have not yet posted in here, then feel free to send them through our website at Cornell, and we'll definitely get back to you. So first, I just want to thank the panel very much for your time today. I found this really insightful. I've learned a ton. I'm going to hit the books and see what more I could dive into and understand more about. So Lots of takeaways here, and I can't wait to see the write-up that our team does for it and to send it out to everybody who's attended today and who's registered for this event. And just finally, that you know, the programs that we run at University of Nottingham and at Cornell are apprenticeship funded programs, and therefore they come out of a different budget, and it's not going to be your department's budget or your L&D budgets of your company. So definitely please do get in touch with us if you're interested in hearing more about what we have to offer. Thank you again, and we hope to see you sometime soon. I'm sure we'll be running more of these data panel discussions in the future. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks, guys. Take care.